It's InfoWars Nightly News. We are back. What an amazing interview with Lord Monckton. It is certainly a serious blow against tyranny that the Al Gore, George Soros global government carbon tax fraud is burning and in flames. The dragon's down, but it's not out. But if we continue to expose these criminal fraudsters, we're going to end up winning. We're winning the big battles, but we've got to keep the war against tyranny going. Now, somebody else who's having an incredible effect is Stewart Rhodes. He's a top of his class Yale law graduate, Army veteran paratrooper, of course, worked on Ron Paul's congressional office. And a few years ago, he founded Oath Keepers, and it's been demonized and attacked. All they say is, hey, we want military and police to follow their oath to protect and defend the Constitution and our republic, to be good guys. Because tyranny will come to your door in a uniform, but liberty also can be defended by a uniform, and so it's a sacred honor. But I tell you, he got criticized for bringing up checkpoints and gun confiscation and martial law during collapses a few years ago, I guess 3 years ago or so, when they founded Oath Keepers. Maybe it's been longer, time flies. And now, all that's mainstream news. Now that's a serious discussion that needs to happen. Because he's a veteran and a historian and a constitutional lawyer, he saw what was happening, as many of us did, and got out there with a much-needed message to police and military. So I want to talk about the Super Congress with him. I want to talk about Quartzsite and get an update there, because they got a rally coming up and the bizarre activities. And this hype I keep hearing. And they've even had people on Fox News talk about a coup against Obama. A terrible idea. That would only be a police state pretext, only be used to crack down. Obama is a puppet. We need to abolish the Federal Reserve and restore the Republic and have the Congress take its power back from the president. The president is becoming a dictator, but not individually. The office is being given those powers by the offshore banks. So Obama could be sent to Pluto tomorrow, and like shark teeth, more puppets would roll into place. We don't want the low-level nobodies like Obama, with all the parades and pomp and circumstance to make you think the buck stops with him. We want the people running the puppets, and we're identifying them here each and every night. With more on all these subjects is Stewart Rhodes of oathkeepers.org. Stewart, great to have you here with us tonight.
Good to go, Alex. Good to be here.
Well, you heard me throw out the gambit of issues. Take any one you want in order, or bring something up that I didn't mention.
Well, I think you're dead on. The great danger, one of the great dangers is that in response to the chaos that's being created through the destruction of our currency, people will be tempted to look for a silver bullet. And the temptation will be to jump into the arms of a bunch of neocon generals, military-industrial complex CEOs. And that kind of chatter's been out there for a couple of years now. I get it a lot with Oath Keepers, people saying, well, you should march on D.C. and the military should go in there and kick them all out and take over. But there's no constitutional sanction whatsoever for that being done. And really, it'd be like the most diabolical way to get the American people to scrap the Constitution, would make them think that they must jump into a military coup to save themselves. And so we have to, warn against that, remind them that the actual answer is state nullification, as Madison and Jefferson pointed out way back in 1798 in the Kentucky and Virginia resolutions. That's the answer, is the states standing up. That's the constitutional remedy. Not jumping into.
And that's what the John Warner Defense Authorization Act in Bush and now Obama with the Governor's Council has done. If you read John Warner Defense Authorization, as you have, 2007, excuse me, they say this is for insurrection in the states. It can even remove governors, bring in generals. They understand that is the silver bullet put there by the founders. But it's not an easy silver bullet. We've got to take the states back to do that, but that is the remedy. So they're trying to head that off. They're trying to demonize it. They're trying to call it secession. But it's not secession, is it?
Well, no. Nullification is, as Thomas Woods points out in his book, nullification is actually the middle ground. It's the mild constitutional remedy before you leave the constitutional union. I mean, and the way to look at this is that they're destroying the union itself. But this is the way to correct it, and it's the constitutional method. It's the only constitutional method of correction. Anything else is destroying the Constitution. Whether it's letting the president do what he wants to do, letting Congress walk all over us, or jumping into the arms of a military coup to stop them, those are both destructive.
Stewart, I want you to elaborate as a constitutional lawyer and somebody who's worked in Congress on your view of the Super Congress. The way I read it a month or so ago when they put it into place, this republic is dying not with a bang but with a whimper. A 12-member council that originates spending and cutting bills, that's the power of the purse, is supposed to come out of individual House members and be debated. It bypasses that, and if the Congress doesn't go along with their recommendation, then the super committee's bill goes through. I mean, this is, in the 230 plus years, we've never seen this, not even under Lincoln. He just ignored Congress. This is a weird legalese lawyer way to act like Congress is still there, but it's been replaced with the 12 ring wraiths with Obama as the head of the Council of 13. Just unprecedented.
And it also gives to the president the authority to raise the debt limit on his own. That's something else it does that most folks aren't paying attention to. He can raise, at his own discretion, raise the debt limit, and all that Congress can do in reaction to it is to pass that legislation to stop it. But then he can just veto that legislation. So it puts Congress in the perverse posture of being the reactor and him the initiator of legislation himself.
So we have him launching wars in Libya and saying he doesn't need congressional approval openly. He has the UN for authority. Treason. And I want to ask you, in your view, if that isn't treason, what is? Then we have the power of the purse being transferred to the president. It's amazing.
Well, sure. They're putting, this is the same process that Germany went through. You make it legal. The Nazis made everything they did legal. This is the same thing. They are destroying the fabric of the republic and putting as much power as possible into the hands of the executive branch. And you've got both. It's a bipartisan assault. You've got people, so-called Tea Party leaders like Allen West, unfortunately, guys like that. Everyone was all, yeah, they're great Tea Party people. They voted for this monstrosity. And what they voted for is the destruction of the principle of representative government. And they voted for an elected dictatorship. That's what this is setting up. The president can do what he wants. Congress is kind of like the ancient Roman Senate. He's become meaningless. Kind of the Senate's become a rubber stamp.
A ceremonial, vestigial thing. They don't get rid of it completely. They just let them debate it. But if they don't do what the emperor wants, well, the emperor does it regardless. And now that power's passed. That's what's so frightening about this is we're seeing incredibly historical, tyrannical things happening, and it's not even an issue. And then Ron Paul raises it, and the media says, look at the kook. I mean, I don't think a lot of these bureaucrats and minions and even corporate chiefs realize in every case in history, once you unloose unbridled power, then the most horrible of people go into that void, and it invariably degenerates into hell itself.
Yeah, they always believe they can control it, and they see themselves as being, part of the inner circle, and so they go along with the destruction. And Congressman Paul is correct, and frankly, I think that anybody in Congress who voted for that ridiculous bill should be kicked out on the curb. I don't care how much they're liked for any other reason. They should go because they don't understand the Constitution.
Let me ask you this: talking to the tens of thousands of Oath Keepers and your supporters out there. You had talked last time we spoke a few months ago that the awakening was accelerating. Has all this new openly illegal behavior hastened an even faster awakening?
Yeah, I think it has. We got a phone call just the other day from a sergeant in Afghanistan, and he wanted to let us know that among all of his troops, they're all waking up, and quite a few of them are very much aware of the whole picture. Let's put it that way. He was, he asked us some pretty pointed questions, and we gave our responses, and he said, well, we agree. We see it the same way you do. And so I think the Libya fiasco has opened a lot of their eyes, because here you've got a president who's not even claiming to be acting as the president of the United States and consulting Congress. Bush at least made noises about consulting Congress before he waged war. Here Obama just went straight to the UN, and they see that, and they understand what's really happening. They know who his real masters are. And so I think that there's a kind of a turning of the tide among the troops.
Well, for those that don't understand this, as a military a veteran yourself, as a constitutional lawyer, as somebody who's worked in Congress, I mean, this is 101, and so I want your take on it. that when the president says to Congress, and Congress says, hey, you've got to get authority from us, and he says, no, I don't. But he didn't just say that he had the power. He then groveled to the UN and put a statement out at whitehouse.gov saying, I did this for the credibility of the UN. He's saying, the UN is my boss. That's where the treason comes in. It's not just that he's a tyrant or unconstitutional. The treason is when you go under a foreign power, when you subordinate and seize governmental powers against the Constitution for another power. That's the definition of treason. And when an officer who's sworn an oath does it, it becomes high treason or opening the drawbridge to the enemy. As a constitutional lawyer, do you concur with that analysis?
Well, I mean, treason defined by Article 3 is to wage war against the United States or aid and abet its enemies. And usually you have a declared war to let you know who the enemy is, who you should not be consorting with. And so, I'm not sure if it fits the strict definition of treason the founders put in place, although I consider the United Nations to be our enemy. So I think it certainly is. There's certainly an argument made there.
Well, here's what I'm saying. In the more classical view of treason, let's say it's a sovereign. If a prince of England, and there were some of these cases, consorted with the French king to overthrow his brother so that the French king would come in and invade and put him on the throne, they'd cut your head off. That's high treason. And so this is a level of treason that perhaps the founders couldn't even foresee, where the president is suborning and taking orders from a foreign institution. I mean, if that is not treason, what is?
Well, they certainly understood that could happen, which is why they require that the president be a natural-born citizen. They were concerned about the influence of foreign loyalties and foreign allegiances. And so there is that. But
you're right, they were concerned, but I mean, for me, it's treason. And I'll just say it, he's a tyrant, he's a traitor, he's a piece of trash, but he's a puppet.
Well, I think that's true. And what I would also add is that this is nothing new. Unfortunately, since World War II, since the creation of the United Nations, we have sent our men into harm's way on behalf of the United Nations.
Sure, but this is but usually Congress agrees to it, and Private Michael knew all that. I mean, for me to have the president saying, "I don't need you, Congress," when they're even going public with it, I've got the UN. I mean, what next will he say? Russia gave him an order? Maybe China because they own our debt. I mean, this is one hell of a precedent, Stewart.
Oh, it certainly is. He's just taking the next logical step, just like he's taking the next logical step on saying he can assassinate American citizens found wherever they are. So he's just taking it to the next level. But I just, I want to make it very clear that Bush did the same thing, although not as blatant as far as.
Well, yeah, no, that's as you said. That's how the tyranny works. It gets crazier and crazier. So by logical extension, what do you predict as the next move by this president or the next one if it's not Ron Paul? I mean, how much further does it go?
Well, if he could wage war under UN mandate, setting aside the requirements of the Constitution for Congress to declare war, if he can sidestep Congress for that, and he can sidestep Congress when it comes to raising the debt limit, then he can sidestep Congress for anything. And he can do it under the rubric of the United Nations. And so I wouldn't be surprised if he's foolish enough to try to do a gun ban treaty or something like that through the United Nations. So if he can't get it done, this is the pattern of executive. If he can't get it done through Congress, they ignore Congress and claim the powers of the executive branch. Well, now they're going a step beyond that and saying, even forget about that. It's under the United Nations. I have powers.
Well, that's my next point. If they put in the Unidure Treaty that calls for a small arms ban, handguns, rifles, all of it, and even mainline pundits have written letters. Congress people have gone public, as you know, in the last month and said they're really trying to sign this treaty. If it's not treason, what is it when the government goes to a foreign power and says we're taking your guns? I mean, for me, that's treason against the Bill of Rights, Constitution, against the Republic. I mean, it's overthrowing the system, disarming us, making us slaves, is waging war against us.
I agree. I would agree with that. I would say that at that point they've crossed the line into making war on the American people, and I think the response would be surprising to them. Let's put it that way. I do not believe the people of the United States are going to go along with that. And frankly, if we went along with that, we deserve to be slaves.
Now, Stewart, I want to move quickly now in the time we have left with you here at InfoWars Nightly News. Again, the websites are prisonplanet.tv and InfoWarsNews.com. We're adding a lot of new features, as viewers know. We're bringing you this true alternative, true constitutional, liberty-based news because of your support. We couldn't have done it. If you're not a subscriber watching this in another venue out there, I know some TV stations are now even taking the live feed at 7 p.m. Central. Please think about becoming subscribers to prisonplanet.tv if you want to not be behind us, but right beside us in this fight.